There is something you have been refusing to look at, not the version of it you've been analyzing in your head late at night, not the comfortable story you've been telling yourself about why things are shifting. The real thing, the structural thing, the thing that happened in your body before your mind had language for it. Something tightened, you felt it, a narrowing, a consolidation. Like something that had been leaking for years suddenly found its edges. And in that moment, before the explanations, before the interpretations, before anyone else noticed, the field registered it. The quantum field noticed you've changed. And what happens next is not what you think. Most people who feel this shift make one of two mistakes. They either rush to explain it, to themselves, to others, to anyone who will listen, or they collapse back into the old pattern because the tightening felt like constriction instead of consolidation. They mistake the sensation of structural change for emotional discomfort. They think something is wrong when something is, for the first time in a very long time, precisely right. You are not here today by accident. Something in you recognized this transmission before your mind could catch up. You've been watching yourself change. You've been noticing the reactions of the people around you. You've been feeling the strange electricity of becoming unreadable. And you've been wondering, is this real? Is this sustainable? What exactly have I awakened? Today, you look directly at that question, not at the comfortable version of it, not at the mystical version that lets you feel special without requiring anything of you. The real version, the precise, structural, quantum mechanical version of what happens when a consciousness stops reacting and starts observing. Because here is what no one tells you about the moment you change. The change doesn't begin in your behavior. It doesn't begin in your words or your posture or the way you suddenly hold eye contact longer than you used to. The change begins in the quality of your attention. And the moment the quality of your attention shifts, the moment you move from reactor to witness, the entire probability field that surrounds you begins to reorganize. Not metaphorically, not as a nice idea to hold on to during difficult moments. Structurally, measurably, at the level of physics itself. This is where we begin. Look closer. You've been told about the observer effect. You've probably heard it referenced in conversations about manifestation, about consciousness, about the nature of reality. But most of what you've heard has been a softened version. The comfortable interpretation that leaves the quantum mechanics vague and focuses on the feeling of empowerment. Today, we do not do that. Today, we look at what the observer effect actually means, what it actually demonstrates, and why it is the most precise description of what has been happening to you. In quantum mechanics, the observer effect refers to a specific and verifiable phenomenon. The act of observing a quantum system changes the system. This is not a philosophical position. It is not a belief. It is the result of experimental measurement, replicated thousands of times across dozens of different research contexts. When a quantum particle, an electron, a photon, a unit of energy moving through possibility, is not being observed, it exists in a state of superposition. It is not in one place. It is not traveling one path. It is simultaneously present across every possible configuration it could occupy. It is pure potential, unresolved, uncommitted, vibrating across the full spectrum of what it might become. The moment it is observed, the moment a measuring instrument, a detector, a conscious system turns its attention toward that particle, the superposition collapses. The particle chooses a position. The wave of probability becomes a single, specific, located event. Observation collapses possibility into form. Sit with that for a moment. Don't rush past what you just saw. Now look at your own life through that lens. For years, maybe for most of your life, you have been a system in superposition. Not because you were confused or lost or spiritually undeveloped, because you were reactive, because your attention was being distributed across every possible version of yourself simultaneously. The version that people needed you to be, the version that kept the peace, the version that absorbed the tension in the room so no one else had to, the version that explained itself preemptively, the version that shrunk to make others comfortable, the version that performed certainty it didn't feel. You were everywhere at once. Unresolved, uncommitted, vibrating across every possible configuration of yourself that the environment demanded. And here is the quantum truth of that state. A system in superposition cannot be located. It cannot be pinned. It has no single trajectory. It is, by definition, unpredictable in its specific outcome, even though its probability distribution can be mapped. But when you began to observe yourself, when you stopped reacting and started watching, something fundamental shifted. You began to collapse your own superposition. You began to locate yourself. Not in the position others wanted you to occupy, not in the role the old dynamics required, but in the position your own clear attention revealed. You became specific. You became located. You became real in a way you had not been before. And the field, the quantum field of relationships, of social systems, of the probability space that surrounds every human life, registered that collapse. That's what people are feeling when they look at you differently. That's what the tightening in the room is. That's what the strange buzz is, the conversations happening about you that you can sense but can't quite hear. They are not reacting to your behavior. They are reacting to the fact that you have collapsed your superposition. You are no longer everywhere. You are somewhere. And a system that has located itself is infinitely more powerful and infinitely more unsettling to systems that depend on your dispersal than a system in superposition. This is not mystical. This is the physics of attention. If this transmission is landing with precision rather than just comfort, like the video and subscribe to this channel, we go this deep every time, and the community gathering here is worth being part of. Now let's keep going. Now watch what happens when you look even closer. Because there is a layer underneath this that most people never reach. And it is the layer that explains not just why people are reacting to your change, but why the quantum field itself is reorganizing around you. Every quantum system exists within a field, not as a metaphor, as a physical reality. Quantum field theory, which is the most precisely verified framework in the history of physics, describes reality not as a collection of particles, but as a collection of fields, vast, invisible, continuous structures that permeate all of space and through which particles move as excitations, as ripples, as localized concentrations of field energy. Everything you see, everything you touch, every person you interact with, every social system you participate in, all of it is field dynamics. All of it is patterns of excitation and resonance moving through an underlying structure. Here's what that means for you. When you change your pattern of attention, when you stop being the predictable excitation in the social field that everyone has learned to expect, you do not simply change your behavior. You change your contribution to the field. You change the ripple pattern. And because fields are continuous, because what happens in one part of a field affects every other part, your change propagates. Not just to the people immediately around you, through the entire field structure that your consciousness participates in. That is what you have awakened, not a mystery, not a spiritual power in the supernatural sense, a field reorganization, a new pattern of excitation moving through a system that had become accustomed to your old frequency, and the system is responding. Because that is what fields do. They respond to changes in their excitation patterns. They reorganize, they find new equilibrium, and the equilibrium they find is shaped by the most coherent, most stable, most precisely located source of energy in the field. That source is now you. Let me show you something. There's a story about a woman named Mira. She lived in a city that never stopped moving. She had spent 23 years in that city being useful, not in the way that fills you, in the way that empties you. She was the one who answered the phone at midnight, the one who softened the blow of every difficult conversation, the one who held the tension in every room so that others didn't have to feel it. She had become, without ever consciously deciding to, the emotional infrastructure of every system she belonged to. She wasn't unhappy in the way that makes you leave. She was unhappy in the way that makes you stay. Because staying felt like purpose, and purpose felt like the closest thing to meaning she had access to. Then one evening, something happened that changed nothing and everything simultaneously. She was in a conversation that she had been in 1,000 times before. The words were different, the people were different, but the structure was identical. Someone was performing distress, someone else was performing concern, and Mira was in her usual position, absorbing, translating, smoothing, and in the middle of it, she watched herself do it, not with judgment, not with the exhausted self-awareness of someone who has noticed a pattern they can't escape, with genuine, clear, quiet observation. She watched herself absorb the tension. She watched herself reach for the words that would smooth the edges. She watched the familiar movement of her attention toward the discomfort in the room, like a hand reaching for a hot stove out of habit. And she paused, not dramatically, not in a way that anyone else in the room noticed. She simply paused. She let the tension exist without absorbing it. She let the silence be what it was. She did not reach for the words that would make it easier for everyone else. She watched, and in that moment of watching, something in the room changed. She felt it before she understood it, a shift in the quality of the air, a slight recalibration of where everyone's attention was pointing. The person who had been performing distress faltered slightly, not because they were exposed, but because the expected response didn't arrive and the performance had nowhere to land. Mira didn't say anything profound. She didn't deliver a boundary speech or announce a new version of herself. She simply held the observer position and let the field reorganize around her stillness. On the drive home, she noticed something in her body, not relief exactly, something more structural than relief, a kind of internal coherence that she hadn't felt in years, like something that had been vibrating at a frequency that required constant maintenance had simply stopped. And what remained in the silence of that stopping was more solid than anything the vibration had ever produced. She didn't know yet what she had done. She didn't have language for the quantum mechanics of it. She just knew that something had changed. Not in her circumstances, not in the people around her, in the quality of her attention. And she sensed, with the precision of something felt in the body before it is understood by the mind, that the change was permanent. The next week was strange. People who had barely spoken to her in months suddenly found reasons to call, not with warmth, with a kind of testing quality, probing, checking, running the old programs to see if they still produced the expected outputs. When they didn't, some of them became louder, some became colder. One person, someone she had considered a close friend, told her she seemed different. The word they used was off, as though clarity were a malfunction. Mira watched this too. She watched the field reorganize. She watched the old patterns try to reassert themselves. She watched her own impulse to apologize, to explain, to soften the edges of her change so that others could remain comfortable. And she watched that impulse without following it. She was learning, in real time, the most important thing there is to learn about the observer position. The moment you truly see what has been running a pattern, the pattern loses its power over you. Not because you fight it, because you see it. And what has been seen cannot unsee itself. That is the story of Mira, and it is, in some version, your story. Because you have been in that room. You have been the one absorbing the tension, smoothing the edges, making yourself predictable so that others could feel safe. You have been the one whose reactions were so reliable that people built their strategies around them. And something in you, something quiet and structural and absolutely certain, began to watch. And the field noticed. What was the moment for you, Mestes? The specific thing you finally stopped looking away from? That started this? Drop it in the comments. One sentence is enough. What did you see when you actually looked? Now let's go deeper into what you're actually seeing. Because there is a layer of this that is not comfortable to look at. A layer that most transmissions like this one will skip past because it requires something of you that feels like exposure. I'm not going to skip it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The reason your change is so destabilizing to the systems around you is not simply that you've become more disciplined or more boundaried or more calm. Those things are real and they matter. But the deeper reason, the quantum reason, is this. Your predictability was a resource, not in a cynical way, not necessarily in a malicious way, but in the precise, structural way that quantum field theory describes when it talks about how systems extract energy from their environment. Every social system, every relationship, Every group dynamic, every organizational structure is an energy system. And energy systems, like all physical systems, move toward the configurations that require the least energy to maintain. They find the grooves, they establish the flows, they locate the sources of consistent, reliable input, and they build their structure around those sources. You are a source. Your reactions, your predictable emotional responses, your reliable absorption of tension, your consistent availability for other people's discomfort were a form of energy input that the systems around you had incorporated into their basic operating structure. Not because the people in those systems were bad, because that is what systems do. They use what is available. They optimize around the inputs they can count on. When you withdrew that input, when you stopped reacting on cue, stopped absorbing what wasn't yours to absorb, stopped making yourself predictable for the comfort of others, you did not simply change your behavior. You removed a structural element from the systems that have been built around your availability. And systems do not respond to the loss of a structural element with calm acceptance. They respond with destabilization, with attempts to restore the missing element, with pressure, with testing, with the full range of social and emotional mechanisms that have historically been successful at returning you to your previous configuration. This is what you're feeling. This is the tightening, this is the buzz, this is the strange combination of increased attention and increased pressure that has been surrounding you since you began to change. You are not imagining it. You are not being paranoid. You are accurately perceiving a field that is attempting to reorganize around the loss of a resource it had come to depend on. And here's what you need to understand about this moment with absolute precision, because how you respond to this pressure will determine whether your change is permanent or temporary. The field will test you, not consciously, not with malicious intent, with the same unconscious structural inevitability that a river tests the banks that contain it. The field will probe for the old patterns. It will find the moments when you are tired, when you are uncertain, when the loneliness of the transitional space feels heavier than the discomfort of remaining changed. It will offer you the familiar, the old role, the old dynamic, the old version of yourself that everyone knew how to relate to. And it will make that offer feel like relief. Do not mistake the offer for truth. The relief you feel when you consider returning to the old pattern is not the relief of homecoming. It is the relief of a system that has found its missing input. It is the field's relief, not yours. And the moment you can see that distinction clearly, the moment you can observe that impulse toward retreat without being consumed by it, you have passed the test. This is where the observer position becomes not just a philosophical stance, but a survival mechanism. Not survival in the dramatic sense, survival in the precise sense, the survival of your new configuration against the field's attempt to restore the old one. Pause here. This is not a thought exercise. This is an observation. Close your eyes if you are able, and turn your attention toward the place in your body where you feel the pressure most clearly. Not the emotional story about the pressure, not the names of the people who are applying it, the pressure itself, the physical sensation of a system pushing against your new configuration. Find it. It might be in your chest, it might be in your jaw, it might be in the back of your neck, or the space between your shoulder blades. It is somewhere in your body right now, because your body is the first instrument that registered this shift, and it is still processing the field's response. Now, don't try to release it. Don't try to breathe through it or soften it or make it more comfortable. Simply watch it. Observe the sensation without interpreting it, without labeling it as anxiety or stress or conflict, without reaching for a story about where it came from or what it means. Just watch it the way you might watch a weather system moving through, with interest, with precision, without the need to stop it or speed it up. Notice what happens when you simply observe it. For most people, something shifts, not dramatically, not with the sudden release of a breakthrough, something quieter. The sensation remains, but its quality changes. What felt like pressure begins to feel like information. What felt like constriction begins to feel like structure. Because that is what it is. The tightening you have been feeling is not emotional distress. It is structural consolidation. It is the sensation of a system finding its edges, of a consciousness locating itself in the field after years of dispersal. You are not contracting, you are consolidating. Open your eyes and look at what you just observed. That sensation, the one you just watched without interpretation, that is the quantum signature of your change. That is what it feels like from the inside when a probability field collapses around a new configuration. And the fact that you can observe it without being swept away by it, that is the observer position. That is the most powerful place you can stand in the universe. Not because it controls anything, because it sees everything clearly. And clarity, as we will return to again and again, is the only force that transforms without resistance. Now let's look at the layer underneath that, because there is something about the nature of your change that needs to be seen with even greater precision. Something that most people in your position either miss entirely or understand intellectually without ever feeling it in their body. The change that the field has registered in you is not primarily a change in your behavior. Behavior is downstream. Behavior is the visible expression of something that happened much earlier, at a much more fundamental level. The change that the field has registered is a change in the quality of your attention. Specifically, you have begun to observe yourself observing. Think about what that means. For most of your life, for most people's lives, attention operates in one direction, outward, toward the environment, toward other people, toward the demands and signals and emotional weather of the world around you. You react to what you perceive, you adjust to what you feel coming from outside. Your attention is fundamentally, continuously oriented toward the external field. This is not a failure. This is the default configuration of a social animal embedded in a social field. It is the way human attention evolved. It is the way we learn to navigate environments that are complex and unpredictable and full of other agents whose behavior matters to our survival. But here is what that default configuration costs. When your attention is entirely oriented outward, when you are continuously scanning the environment for signals that require a response, you are, by definition, not observing yourself. You are not watching the one who is watching. You are not seeing the patterns in your own responses. You are not noticing the automatic movements of your attention, the habitual reaches toward certain kinds of stimulation, the reflexive withdrawals from certain kinds of discomfort. You are simply reacting, continuously, to a field that has learned exactly which signals produce exactly which reactions. And a system that can be reliably stimulated into predictable responses is, in the precise language of quantum mechanics, a classical system. Not a quantum system, a classical system. One that behaves according to fixed laws, one that can be modeled, predicted, and therefore controlled. When you began to observe yourself, when you began to watch your own attention, to notice the patterns in your own reactions, to see the automatic programs running in your own consciousness, you introduced something into the system that classical mechanics cannot account for, a genuine observer. And genuine observation, the kind that watches the watcher, that sees the seer, that notices the one who is noticing, is the event that quantum mechanics describes as the collapse of the wave function. It is the moment when superposition resolves, when possibility becomes specific, when the system that has been vibrating across every possible configuration finally, precisely, locates itself. You located yourself. And the field, which had been built around the assumption of your dispersal, which had been structured to take advantage of your superposition, suddenly found itself in the presence of a collapsed wave function, a specific, located, coherent source of energy, an observer who could not be predicted because an observer is, by definition, the one who sees rather than the one who is seen. This is what you awakened, not mystery, not supernatural power, the most fundamental thing in the universe, genuine, clear, self-referential observation. And here's what that means for what happens next. When a coherent, located source of energy enters a field, the field reorganizes. This is not optional. This is not a matter of whether the other elements of the field want to reorganize. Fields reorganize around coherent sources. It is the most basic principle of field dynamics. Coherence attracts organization. Stability generates structure. A located system becomes the reference point around which surrounding systems calibrate. You are becoming the reference point, not because you are trying to lead, not because you are performing confidence or projecting authority, because you have collapsed your superposition and the field has no choice but to reorganize around the most coherent element it contains. But look closer, because there is a version of this understanding that is seductive and dangerous, a version that turns the observer position into an ego project. That takes the recognition of your own coherence and uses it to construct a new identity, the awakened one, the one who has changed, the one who is now more powerful than those around them. The version that uses quantum language to dress up a very old and very human impulse, the desire to be special. Watch for that. Watch it with the same clear, unflinching attention that you have been developing throughout this transmission. Because the moment the observer position becomes an identity you are performing rather than a quality of attention you are embodying, you have lost it. You have collapsed back into superposition. Just a different kind of superposition, the superposition of spiritual performance rather than reactive behavior. The observer is not a role, the observer is not an identity, the observer is what remains when you stop performing every role and inhabiting every identity. It is the awareness that watches the performance, the consciousness that sees the identity. It cannot be added to, it cannot be improved, it cannot be awakened to a higher level. It can only be recognized and then recognized again and again each time you catch yourself sliding back into performance and return to the simple, clear, unflinching act of watching. This is the practice, not a one-time event, a continuous return. And here is what that continuous return produces in the quantum field of your life. Every time you catch yourself beginning to react in the old way, beginning to absorb what isn't yours, beginning to explain yourself preemptively, beginning to perform the version of yourself that the environment is requesting, and you pause and you watch that impulse without following it, you are performing an act of quantum observation. You are collapsing a probability wave. You are choosing a specific location in the field rather than dispersing across all the possible locations that the old patterns would have you occupy. And each time you do this, the field records it. Not in a mystical sense, in the precise sense that every interaction in a field changes the field. Every collapsed wave function changes the probability distribution of subsequent wave functions. Every moment of genuine observation changes the landscape of what is possible in the next moment. You are not just changing your behavior, you are rewriting the probability structure of your reality. That is what quantum mechanics actually says about the observer. Not that you can manifest parking spaces by believing hard enough. That genuine observation, clear, self-referential, unflinching attention, changes the probability structure of the field you inhabit. It doesn't guarantee specific outcomes. It doesn't give you control. It gives you something more powerful than control. It gives you clarity. And clarity, as we said at the beginning, is the only force that transforms without resistance. Let me show you the layer underneath that. There is a man named Elias who spent most of his adult life being the most intelligent person in every room he entered. Not as a boast, as a burden. He had learned early that his intelligence was the currency that bought him safety. That if he could analyze a situation faster than anyone else, if he could produce the answer before the question was fully formed, if he could demonstrate the kind of rapid, comprehensive understanding that made other people feel both impressed and slightly inadequate, he would be valued, he would be kept, he would be safe. He had spent decades perfecting this performance, and it had worked in the way that performances work. It had produced the external conditions of success, the career, the reputation. The circle of people who sought him out for his analysis, his insight, his ability to see what others missed. But Elias had never turned that analytical intelligence on himself. Not really. He had analyzed his patterns, certainly. He could describe his own psychology with remarkable precision. He could explain his childhood dynamics, his attachment style, his cognitive tendencies. He had the language for all of it. But language is not observation. Understanding is not seeing. Elias could describe the river without ever getting in the water. Then something happened that his intelligence could not explain away. He was in a meeting on an important one, the kind that his career had been building toward for years. And he realized in the middle of his own analysis that he was performing. Not lying, not being inauthentic in the crude sense. Performing, producing the version of his intelligence that the room was expecting. Calibrating his insights to land with maximum impact. Watching, with a part of his attention, the effect his words were having on the other people in the room, and adjusting in real time to maximize that effect. He had done this 10,000 times. It was as automatic as breathing. But this time, for reasons he could not identify, he watched it happening. He saw the performance from outside the performance. He observed the observer who was managing the room, and he saw with absolute clarity that the observer who was managing the room was not him. It was a construction, a very sophisticated, very successful construction. But a construction nonetheless, and in the moment of seeing it clearly, the construction lost its power over him, not its utility. It still worked. People were still responding to him in the expected ways. The performance was still producing the expected results, but it had lost its grip. It had lost the quality of necessity that had made it feel like identity rather than strategy. He could see it now, and what can be seen can be chosen rather than compelled. Elias went home that evening and sat in silence for a long time, not meditating in any formal sense, simply sitting, simply watching the movements of his own mind, the habitual reaches for analysis, the automatic assessments, the continuous low-level performance of intelligence that ran even when no audience was present. He watched all of it, without judgment, without the impulse to fix or improve or optimize. He just watched. And something began to happen that he had no framework for. The performance, which had been running continuously for decades, began to slow, not because he was suppressing it, because he was watching it. And a performance that is watched by a genuine observer loses its compulsive quality. It becomes a choice. And choices, unlike compulsions, can be set down. In the weeks that followed, Elias noticed something strange. People who had known him for years began to respond to him differently, not with less respect, but with a different kind of respect, something less dazzled and more solid, as though they were, for the first time, encountering him rather than his performance, as though there was now someone actually present in the room rather than a very sophisticated projection of what someone should look like. His analysis didn't become less sharp, his intelligence didn't diminish, but it stopped being the thing he was. It became something he had, a capacity he could deploy or set aside depending on what the moment actually required. And the field around him reorganized to reflect this. The people who had been drawn to him primarily for the performance, who had needed him to be the most intelligent person in the room because it served their own need to be associated with that, began to drift. And the people who had always sensed something more underneath the performance, who had been waiting for Elias to show up as something more than his own brilliance, began to move closer. He hadn't changed his behavior dramatically. He hadn't made announcements or declarations. He had simply watched. And what he watched transformed in the light of his attention. That is the story of Elias, and it is, in some version, your story too, because you have been performing something. Maybe not intelligence, maybe availability, maybe strength, maybe spirituality, maybe the version of yourself that keeps everyone comfortable and the peace intact. Whatever the performance has been, you have been running it so long and so automatically that it stopped feeling like a performance and started feeling like identity. And something, some moment, some accumulation of moments cracked that identification open, let the light in, showed you the watcher watching the performance. And in that moment of seeing, the performance lost its necessity. This is what you have awakened, not a new identity. The awareness underneath every identity. The observer that was always there, watching, waiting for you to notice it. And now the question is, what do you do with that recognition? Here's what no one tells you about this moment. The recognition is not the destination, the recognition is the beginning. Because the mind, which is very good at turning every genuine insight into a new performance, will immediately attempt to make the observer into a role. It will construct an identity around your awakening. It will begin to perform observation the way it performed intelligence, or availability, or strength. It will find ways to make your new quality of attention into something that can be displayed, admired, and used to secure the same things the old performance was securing. Watch for this. Watch it with the same clear attention that you brought to the original performance. Because this is the recursive challenge of genuine observation. You must observe the observer. You must watch the watcher. You must notice when the awareness that was supposed to be free becomes the foundation for a new construction. This is not a problem to solve, it is a practice to maintain. The practice of returning, again and again, to the simple act of watching without agenda, without the need for the watching to produce anything, without the performance of being someone who has learned to watch, just watching. And here is the paradox that sits at the heart of all of this. The more completely you inhabit the observer position, the more fully you release the need for your watching to produce a particular result, the more powerfully the field reorganizes around you. Because the field responds not to your effort, but to your coherence, not to what you are trying to produce, but to what you actually are. And what you actually are in the observer position is the most coherent thing in the field. A consciousness that is not dispersing itself across reactions and performances and identity constructions. A consciousness that is simply, clearly, completely present with what is. That is rare. That is, in the precise language of quantum field theory, a highly coherent source of field energy. And the field organizes around it the way iron filings organize around a magnet. Not because the magnet is trying to organize them, because coherence is the fundamental organizing principle of fields. You are the magnet. And you don't have to do anything except remain coherent. Now watch what happens when we apply this to the specific situation you're in right now. Because this is not an abstract transmission. This is not a philosophical exercise you engage with and then set aside when you return to your actual life. This is about the specific, concrete, measurable situation you are currently navigating. The people who are reacting to your change, the systems that are pushing back, the internal pressure to explain yourself, to soften your edges, to return to the version of yourself that everyone could predict. Let's look at that situation with precision. The people in your life who are reacting most strongly to your change, the ones who are testing you, probing you, trying to restore the old dynamic, are not doing this because they are bad. They are doing this because they are human. Because human beings, like all biological systems, are wired for prediction. We build models of the people around us. Detailed, automatic, largely unconscious models that allow us to predict their behavior, anticipate their reactions, calibrate our own responses accordingly. These models are not a sign of manipulation or control. They are the basic operating system of social intelligence. But here is what happens when the model breaks down. When your behavior becomes inconsistent with the model someone has built of you, their nervous system registers it as a threat. Not necessarily a conscious threat, a threat at the level of prediction failure. And prediction failure, in the language of neuroscience, activates the same neural circuits as physical danger. The amygdala fires, cortisol rises, attention narrows and sharpens, scanning for information that will allow the model to be updated or the threat to be neutralized. This is why people who are reacting to your change may seem disproportionately intense. They are not reacting to what you actually did. They are reacting to the failure of their prediction. They are reacting to the experience of uncertainty, of not knowing where to place you, how to read you, what to expect from you next. And uncertainty, for the human nervous system, is one of the most uncomfortable experiences available. So they do what nervous systems do when they encounter uncertainty. They try to reduce it. They probe. They test. They apply the social and emotional mechanisms that have historically been successful at producing the expected behavior from you. They increase pressure. They withdraw warmth. They offer the familiar dynamic as a reward for returning to predictability. And here is the most important thing to understand about this process. It is not personal. It is structural. It is the field attempting to restore its previous configuration. It is the probability distribution trying to reassert itself after the collapse of the wave function. When you understand this, when you can see it clearly with the observer's precision, it loses its power to destabilize you, because you are no longer interpreting it as a judgment of your change. You are observing it as a field dynamic, a predictable, understandable, structurally inevitable response to the introduction of a new coherence into an old system. And when you can observe it without being swept into it, something remarkable happens. The field recalibrates. Not immediately, not dramatically, but with the quiet, structural inevitability of a system finding new equilibrium. The people who are testing you begin to adjust their models. The social systems that were pushing back begin to incorporate your new configuration into their operating structure. The buzz, the conversations, the speculation, the attempts to explain your change with the stories that make others comfortable begins to quiet. Not because everyone has been convinced, because the field has found a new stability. And in that new stability, your changed configuration is the reference point. This takes time. It takes consistency. It takes the willingness to remain in the observer position through the discomfort of the transitional phase. The phase where you are no longer who you were, but the field has not yet fully reorganized around who you are becoming. This phase is real, it is uncomfortable, and it is the most important phase of the entire process. Because this is where most people collapse, not because they lack the insight, not because they don't understand the quantum mechanics, because the loneliness of the transitional space, the tightness of the in-between, the discomfort of being neither fully located in the old configuration nor fully stabilized in the new one. These are real and they are heavy, and the old pattern is always available, always offering itself as relief, always whispering that the change was too much, too fast, too disruptive, that returning to the familiar is not failure but wisdom. Watch that whisper. Watch it with the same clear, unflinching attention that you have been developing throughout this transmission. Watch it the way Mira watched her impulse to absorb the tension, the way Elias watched his performance of intelligence, with interest, with precision. Without the need to silence it or follow it, simply watch, and notice what happens to the whisper when it is watched. Notice how the compulsion to return, which felt absolute and urgent and like the only reasonable response, begins to lose its grip the moment it is genuinely observed. Notice how what felt like the voice of wisdom begins to reveal itself as the voice of the field's attempt to restore its missing resource. You are not your field's resource, you are the observer, and the observer does not belong to the field. The observer is what watches the field. This is where we need to do another practice, and this one goes deeper. Pause here. This is not a thought exercise, this is an observation. I want you to bring to mind the specific person or the specific dynamic that has been pushing hardest against your change. Don't analyze it. Don't build a story about it. Just bring it to mind. The quality of the pressure, the texture of the testing, the specific way this person or dynamic has been attempting to restore your previous configuration. Feel it in your body. Where does it land? Where does the pressure of this specific situation live in your physical experience? Now, and this is the precise instruction, watch yourself feeling it. Don't try to release it. Don't try to understand it. Don't try to respond to it or resolve it. Simply observe the sensation of being in this situation. Observe the feelings without being the feelings. Observe the thoughts about this person or dynamic without being those thoughts. Notice. There is a part of you that is feeling the pressure, and there is a part of you that is watching the part that is feeling the pressure. The part that is watching, that is the observer. That is the quantum observer that collapses wave functions. That is the most powerful position available to you. Now, from that observer position, ask yourself one question, not with your analytical mind, with the part of you that simply watches. What is this situation actually asking of me? Not what the person wants, not what the dynamic demands. What is the situation actually asking of you? What would this moment look like if you approached it from the observer position rather than from the reactor position? Sit with that. Don't rush to an answer. Let the observer show you what the analyzer would miss. When you're ready, open your eyes and notice what shifted. This is the practice, not a technique you apply once and then put away. A quality of attention you return to, again and again, every time the field pushes against your new configuration. Every time the pressure rises, every time the whisper offers you the familiar as relief. You return to the observer, you watch, and what you watch transforms. There is a pattern that becomes visible from the observer position that the reactor can never see. If you have watched a dynamic long enough to finally understand it, if staying with something instead of reacting to it revealed what it actually was, share that in the comments. What did you see when you stopped reacting and just watched? Now let's look at the deeper layer of what this means for your life going forward. Because there is a specific and precise thing that happens when you maintain the observer position through the transitional phase. When you hold your new configuration steady against the field's attempts to restore the old one. When you remain coherent through the discomfort of the in-between. The field reorganizes permanently, not partially, not temporarily, permanently. Because fields, once they have found a new equilibrium around a coherent source, do not spontaneously return to previous configurations. The new equilibrium is the new baseline. The new probability distribution is the new landscape of what is possible in your reality. This is what quantum mechanics tells us about the relationship between observers and fields. The observer does not simply influence the field in the moment of observation. The observer changes the probability structure of the field going forward. Every act of genuine observation, every moment of clear, unflinching, self-referential attention, changes the landscape of what is likely to happen next, not by controlling outcomes, by changing the distribution of possibilities. When you stop being predictable, you stop being controllable. When you stop being controllable, you stop being exploitable. And when you stop being exploitable, the systems that were built around your exploitation have to find new configurations, new equilibria, new ways of organizing themselves that do not depend on your dispersal. And in the space that opens up, in the probability field that reorganizes around your new coherence, new things become possible that were not possible before. Not because you manifested them, not because you attracted them with the right frequency of positive thinking. Because the field has reorganized, because the probability distribution has shifted, because the landscape of what is likely, given your new configuration, is genuinely different from the landscape of what was likely given your old one. This is not law of attraction, this is quantum field dynamics. And the difference matters. The law of attraction, as it is popularly understood, asks you to believe hard enough to feel the right feelings, to vibrate at the right frequency, and the universe will deliver what you want. It locates the power in the content of your desire and the intensity of your feeling. Quantum field dynamics locates the power somewhere else entirely. In the quality of your attention, in the coherence of your observation, in the willingness to see clearly yourself, your patterns, the dynamics you have been participating in, without the distortion of hope or fear or the need for a particular outcome. The observer does not manifest, the observer sees. And what is seen clearly, what is observed without the distortion of wanting it to be different than it is, reorganizes, not because the observer wills it, because clarity is the most powerful organizing force in the universe. Because a system that is seen precisely, without distortion, without the observer's agenda overlaid on top of it, that system reveals its own natural structure, its own inherent order, its own most coherent configuration. And that configuration is almost always more aligned with what you actually need than anything you could have designed through deliberate manifestation. This is the deepest paradox of the observer position. The less you try to control the outcome, the more completely you release the need for the field to reorganize in a specific way, the more powerfully it reorganizes around your clarity. Because clarity is not a strategy, it is not a technique. It is the absence of the distortions that prevent the field from finding its natural order. You are not here to fix your life. You are here to watch it transform the moment you stop looking away. And what you have been watching, what you have been refusing to look away from, even when the pressure to do so has been intense, is the truth of what you have been. The patterns you have been running, the role you have been playing, the way your predictability has been a resource for systems that were not serving your growth. You have looked at that, and in looking at it, you have changed it. Not by fighting it, not by forcing a different outcome, by seeing it clearly. by bringing the quantum observer's attention to bear on the construction, and watching the construction reveal itself as exactly that, a construction. Something built, not something inherent. Something that can be set down, not something that defines you. Now let's look at what this means for the specific way reality is about to reorganize around you. Because here's what happens when a consciousness holds the observer position through the transitional phase and the field finds its new equilibrium. First, the testing stops, not because the people around you have changed, because the field has recalibrated. The probing, the pressure, the attempts to restore the old dynamic, these were the field's response to uncertainty, to the prediction failure that your change created. Once the field has updated its model of you, once the new configuration has been stable long enough to become the new baseline, the testing becomes unnecessary. The field has found its new equilibrium. Your new configuration is now the expected pattern. And what is expected does not need to be tested. This does not mean everyone around you will become comfortable with your change. Some people's models of you are so deeply embedded, so structurally integrated into their own identity and their own sense of safety, that updating the model is not possible for them. They will not be able to incorporate your new configuration into their operating structure, and they will drift. Not dramatically in most cases, quietly. The conversations will thin, the invitations will stop. The dynamic will simply dissolve, because a dynamic requires two participants operating from compatible models. When your model of yourself no longer matches their model of you, the dynamic has no ground to stand on. This is not loss. This is the field finding its natural order. The connections that dissolve were connections built around your dispersal, your predictability, your availability as a resource. They were connections that depended on you not being fully located. And a fully located consciousness cannot maintain connections that require its dispersal. Not without collapsing back into superposition. Not without losing the coherence that the field is now organized around. Let them go, not with anger, not with the performance of spiritual detachment, with the simple, clear recognition that what is dissolving was never built on the real you. It was built on the construction. And the construction has been seen through, and what has been seen through cannot be unseen. Second, new resonances emerge. This is the part that is difficult to describe without sounding mystical, but it is entirely structural. When your field configuration changes, when you become a different kind of attractor in the probability landscape thus, you begin to resonate with different elements of the field. People who had been in your probability space but never quite connected begin to move closer. Opportunities that were in the landscape but outside your previous attractor basin begin to enter your range. Circumstances that would have required you to be a different version of yourself, a more coherent, more located, more genuinely present version, begin to materialize, not because you manifested them, because the field reorganized, because the probability distribution shifted, because you are now a different kind of attractor, and different things are attracted. This is the quantum field noticing you've changed. And what happens next is the field reorganizing around your new frequency. Not as a reward for your growth, not as the universe delivering what you deserve, as the simple, structural, inevitable consequence of a field finding new equilibrium around a new coherent source. Third, your own perception changes. And this is perhaps the most important reorganization of all. Because when you are genuinely in the observer position, when you have stopped dispersing yourself across reactions and performances and identity constructions, you begin to see the field itself with a clarity that was not available before. You begin to notice patterns that were invisible when you were embedded in them. You begin to see the dynamics of the systems around you with the precision of someone who is watching them rather than participating in them. This is not detachment. This is the difference between being inside a painting and standing back far enough to see the composition. When you are inside the painting, when your attention is entirely absorbed by the immediate reactive experience of being in the field, you cannot see the field. You can only experience it. But when you step into the observer position, when you create the internal space to watch rather than simply react, the field becomes visible. And what is visible can be navigated with a precision that is simply not available to a system in superposition. You begin to see who is testing and who is genuinely connecting. You begin to see which dynamics are serving your growth and which are attempting to restore your dispersal. You begin to see the probability structure of your own life, the patterns that keep repeating, the attractors that keep pulling, the configurations that keep reasserting themselves, with the clarity of a physicist reading a field map, rather than the confusion of a particle being moved by forces it cannot see. This is the gift of the observer position, not control, not the ability to force the field into the configuration you prefer, the ability to see the field clearly. And from that seeing, from that precise, unflinching observer's clarity, to make choices that are genuinely yours, not the field's choices, not the construction's choices, yours. And here's where we return to the question that opened this transmission. What exactly have you awakened? You have awakened the observer, the part of you that watches rather than reacts, the part of you that sees the construction rather than inhabiting it, the part of you that can hold the field's pressure without being reorganized by it, the part of you that is, in the precise language of quantum mechanics, the most powerful position in the universe. Not because it controls, but because it sees clearly, and the field has noticed. The tightening you felt, that structural consolidation in your body, in your relationships, in the quality of your attention, that was the field registering the collapse of your superposition. The buzz, the testing, the strange combination of increased attention and increased pressure shut. That was the field attempting to restore its previous configuration. And the fact that you are still here, that you have held your new configuration through the discomfort of the transitional phase, that you are watching this transmission rather than retreating to the familiar, that is the field beginning to find its new equilibrium. You are in the most important moment of the entire process, the moment just before the new equilibrium stabilizes, the moment when the pressure is still present but beginning to thin, when the testing is still happening but beginning to lose its urgency, when the new configuration is not yet fully the baseline but is becoming it. Do not collapse now, not because collapse would be permanent, it wouldn't be, but because you are this close. You are this close to the moment when the field stops pushing and starts organizing, when the people around you stop testing and start adjusting, when the probability landscape of your life shifts permanently around your new coherence. Stay in the observer position, not as a performance of staying, as a genuine, continuous return to the act of watching. Every time the pressure rises, watch it. Every time the whisper offers you the familiar, watch it. Every time the impulse to explain yourself, to soften your edges, to return to the predictable version of yourself rises, watch it. And then make a choice, a genuine choice. Not a reaction, not the field's choice, yours. This is where we need to do the final practice of this transmission. And this one is not about observing pressure or difficulty. This one is about observing what is possible. Pause here. This is not a thought exercise, this is an observation. Close your eyes and bring your attention to the observer itself. Not to what the observer is watching, to the observer, to the awareness that is aware, to the consciousness that is conscious. Feel it. It has no location, but it is present. It has no size, but it contains everything you experience. It has no story, but it is the one who watches every story you have ever told yourself about yourself. This is what you are, not the construction, not the performance, not the role the field has been asking you to play. This, the awareness that watches all of it. Now from this position, from the observer's position, from the awareness that is aware, look at your life as though you are seeing it for the first time. Not with the eyes of the person who has been living it, embedded in its dynamics, reactive to its pressures. With the eyes of the observer who has been watching all of it, always waiting for you to notice it. What do you see? What becomes visible when you look at your life from the observer position rather than from inside it? What patterns reveal themselves? What possibilities appear in the probability landscape that were invisible when you were dispersed across reactions and performances? What is the field, Damas, now that it has noticed you've changed, beginning to organize around? Sit with this. Don't rush to answers. Let the observer show you what the reactor could never see. When you're ready, open your eyes. and notice that you are still here, still in the observer position, still watching, still coherent, still located. The field is noticed, and what happens next is not something you need to force or manifest or control. It is the natural, structural, inevitable consequence of a field finding new equilibrium around a coherent source. It is reality reorganizing around your new frequency. Now I want to speak directly to what you're going to do when this transmission ends, because this is the moment that separates the people who are genuinely changing from the people who are consuming content about changing. And I say that not to judge, but because you deserve the precision. When this ends, the field will still be there, the pressure will still be there, the people who are testing you will still be there, the whisper offering you the familiar will still be there, and the observer, the awareness that has been watching all of it throughout this transmission, will still be there. The question is, will you stay in the observer position when the transmission is over? Not permanently, not as a spiritual achievement you maintain without effort. Simply, will you return to it? Will you remember in the moments when the pressure rises and the impulse to react is strongest, that there is a position available to you that is more powerful than any reaction? A position from which you can see the field rather than simply be moved by it? Will you watch? This is the only practice that matters, not a meditation technique, not a manifestation method, not a set of behavioral changes you implement to signal your growth to the field. Simply the continuous, patient, unflinching return to the act of watching. Every time you catch yourself beginning to react in the old way, and you return to the observer, that is the practice. Every time the field pushes against your new configuration, and you watch the pushing rather than being reorganized by it, that is the practice. Every time the construction tries to reassert itself, tries to convince you that the performance is the identity, that the role is the self, that the pattern is the person, and you see through it, that is the practice. And over time, not all at once, not in a dramatic moment of transformation, but through the accumulation of countless small returns to the observer position, the field stabilizes around your new coherence. The probability landscape shifts, the new configuration becomes the baseline, and what was possible before, what the old field organized around your dispersal could produce, is replaced by something that could only emerge from the field organized around your clarity, something genuinely new, something that could not have existed in the old configuration, something that the quantum field, reorganizing around your new frequency, is already beginning to produce. You don't have to know what it is, you don't have to be able to see it yet. You just have to stay in the observer position long enough for the field to show you. Because the field has noticed you've changed. And what it does next, what it is already doing in the probability space just ahead of your current moment, is respond to the most coherent element it contains, you. Now, before we close, I want to speak to the community of observers who are watching this, because there is something that happens when a field of genuine observers comes together, something that amplifies what each individual observer is capable of seeing. When you watch clearly, you change what you watch. When a community of people who are committed to clear, unflinching observation comes together, when they share what they see, when they witness each other seeing, when they hold the observer position together, the field that their collective attention inhabits becomes something remarkable, a field of extraordinary clarity, a probability landscape organized not around any individual's coherence, but around the coherence of genuine collective observation. This is what this community is. A field of observers, people who have chosen to stop looking away, people who have felt the tightening, the structural consolidation, the strange electricity of becoming unreadable, and who have chosen to watch it rather than retreat from it. If you are part of that field, if something in this transmission landed with the precision of recognition rather than the comfort of agreement, then I want to hear what you saw. Not what you think, not what you believe, what you saw, what became visible when you looked at your own situation through the lens of the observer, what shifted in your body during the practices, what the field around you has been doing since you began to change. Drop it in the comments. one sentence, one word if that's all that's true. Share what you observed, the specific thing that this transmission helped you see clearly. And if someone in your life is in the transitional phase right now, if someone you know is feeling the tightening, the pressure, the strange combination of increased attention and increased discomfort that comes with genuine change, return to this transmission yourself when the noise of the day has settled, when you feel yourself beginning to react instead of watching. And share it with the person who needs the courage to look at what they've been avoiding. When you do that, you are not simply passing along a video. You are giving them permission to look. And that permission, the act of one observer pointing another toward the thing they've been pretending isn't there, creates a field between you that amplifies the clarity for both. You see more clearly because you shared it. They see more clearly because someone who had already looked was willing to point. That is collective observation, and it reveals what individual watching cannot. Now here's what I want you to carry from this transmission, not as a belief, as an observation. What you observe, you change. What you avoid observing controls you. The observer is the most powerful position in the universe, not because it controls, but because it sees clearly. And clarity is the only force that transforms without resistance. The quantum field has noticed you've changed. It noticed before you did. It noticed in the tightening, in the structural consolidation, in the way the systems around you began to destabilize and push back and test and probe. It noticed in the way certain connections began to thin and others began to strengthen. It noticed in the way the probability landscape of your life began to shift, quietly, structurally, with the inevitability of a field finding new equilibrium around a coherent source. And what happens next is not a mystery. It is not a spiritual promise that may or may not be delivered depending on how faithfully you maintain the right attitude. It is a structural consequence, a quantum inevitability. The field reorganizes around your new frequency, not because you deserve it, not because the universe is rewarding your growth, because that is what fields do. They find equilibrium. They organize around coherence. They respond to the quality of the observation that inhabits them. And you, the observer who has been watching through this entire transmission, who has held the position through the practices, who has looked at the specific situations and dynamics and pressures of your own life without looking away. You are the coherence that the field is organizing around. Stay there. Return to it when you drift. Watch when the impulse to react is strongest. Hold the observer position through the discomfort of the transitional phase, and watch what happens next. Because reality has no choice but to respond to the one who truly sees. You were never meant to look away. You were meant to watch, and now you are watching. And what has been seen cannot be unseen. And the field, the quantum field of your relationships, your circumstances, your probability landscape, your life, is already reorganizing. Not toward what you hope for, toward what is possible when a consciousness stops dispersing itself across reactions and performances and constructions and simply sees. That is what you have awakened, and it is bigger than you know, and it is already moving. Keep watching. The observer is the most powerful position in the universe, and you are the observer.